I really hope y'all will forgive that thumbnail because that is not my best work. Hello friends, I'm DustFood, and today I just had this little idea for a quick video, which means it's probably going to go for an hour, but we'll try to contain myself to some extent, and I want to talk about some killers that need nerfs. Now, this is not completely out of the blue. The reason I thought of this was the most recent mid-chapter update gave a lot of little buffs to killers, so I wanted to balance it out a little bit. One thing you will find with this is that I'm not talking about major buffs for most of these killers, so it's not going to be something where I'm saying that if a killer's on here, I am not saying tear them to the ground, destroy them completely, or anything like that. And also, I'm not going off of the tier list, so it's not just going to be me saying all of the best killers that, they're good? Yeah, they need a nerf. There are plenty of really good killers who I think are actually in a pretty healthy place. So somebody like Artist comes to mind, where she's very, very strong, but I don't really think she needs much in the way of a nerf. I think that maybe controversial, but Alien is kind of in that same area for me. So just because a killer is good does not mean I think they need to be nerfed. Now, there are some good killers on here, and I'm going to get it. Let's get it started. Let's just get into it. And look, you're smart. You understand. Anyway, do the usual YouTube things, like, subscribe, yada, yada, yada. Anyway, number one is the mastermind, Albert Wesker. And this one's going to ruffle some feathers because a lot of people like Wesker. A lot of people like Wesker how he is. And I get that. And by the way, I'm one of those people, sort of. I am so close to being a fan of where Wesker is. There's only one change I would make, and then I think he would actually be in the argument for a perfect killer, for one of the healthiest killers in the game. All they have to do, in my opinion, to make Wesker somebody who I have no complaints about, somebody that I think everybody can look at and say, wow, that is just a masterclass in killer design, is remove the infection. And the reason for that is because I like his chase power. I think his chase power is great. It's fun to play with, obviously, but then I think it's also generally pretty fun to play against. So a lot to like there. And then for me, at least, I don't even mind his giant terror radius. I know that there are some downsides if you're playing on the meat plant and he's got that plus coulrophobia, whatever. I get that, but you know, that's just kind of a tough break. That's not something I think you're going to consistently have to worry about. For me, what I don't like is the whole infection mechanic, and I don't like it on several fronts. I think there are several areas in which I think that is a weak aspect of game design. Weskers have this really strong reputation for being tunnelers, and first off, it's very true. It's very, very true. But I think that part of the issue that we're seeing here is that they're incentivized to tunnel. So with the infection mechanic, let's say Wesker hit you with the tentacle at some point during your chase. It could be a first hit, it could be the hit that downed you, it could have been both of them, but generally speaking, a good Wesker will use the tentacle. And I realize I'm saying tentacle, which is more actually the Nemesis thing, but you get my point. It's the, whatever his little grabby black goo is, right? It's kind of tentacle-like. Anyway, Wesker will use that at some point in the chase. You will be down, you get hooked. It does reduce a little while you're on the hook, but it doesn't go away, obviously. So once you get unhooked, you are left with a choice. Do you sit there and heal, which, I mean, obviously he could come back and chase you, and then you're going to be slowed down by, 8 or 9% if the chase goes on long enough, which is going to basically be a guaranteed down. Do you do that? Do you sit there, do you heal, or do you forsake healing to go get one of the medical things, one of the little spray cans, which if you use it, it will tell Wesker where you are. I think that sets it up to where he's going to have he has a lot working for him in that way. What he basically gets there is he gets the choice of a survivor who chooses to remain infected or chooses to remain injured. And either way, most survivors are going to try to address both of those as soon as possible. And if a Wesker is mean-spirited enough to really just hover around the area, they can absolutely tunnel out a survivor very well, because on top of that, on top of this very difficult choice, he has one of the stronger chase powers in the game. So even if you're rather good at looping, you're still kind of screwed. You're still in a really bad situation. And I think the easiest fix to this is just get rid of the infection mechanic. He does not need it to catch people. A good or even decent Wesker does not need you to be slowed down 8% to be able to catch you. And for anybody arguing that it would somehow knock him down a tier if all of a sudden he doesn't have the built-in slowdown of that, I just don't agree. I don't agree. I think he's just like, without it, I think he's just a really well-balanced version of what the Nerfs should be, right? He's just somebody who he has a very similar power. He just obviously doesn't go through the map and all that, which is why he's much better designed. And if you take that infection power out of there, I think he remains very strong, very, very strong, but I don't think you're looking at something that's necessarily as, I don't want to say broken, because I don't think Wesker's broken. Right? I don't think he's so broken that he requires some immediate nerf. I just think he's unhealthy at the moment. I think that right now what we see is unhealthy from Wesker because it encourages a playstyle that, while totally valid and totally fair and you should be able to do it, it's not fun. It's not fun for the other side. In fact, it's pretty brutal. If you go up against a Wesker who's determined to tunnel you out, and you did not bring a full Swift where everybody was specifically designing their builds to try to counter this kind of thing, you're screwed. You're done. And that's not fun. That's not how anybody wants to go about things. So those are my thoughts on Wesker. I do think he's a really well-designed killer, and I like Wesker, so please don't take the wrong thing out of this. I just think that when I look at Wesker, I see his entire kit and I'm like, man, most of this is really good. I just really don't like the infection mechanic. So interested to see how people feel about this one. Let me know down below. Am I smart? Am I dumb? Let me know. Next up is another generally well-designed killer. And again, we are still kind of hovering towards the top of the tier list with this one, but I promise we're going to have a few that are not quite up there. And this is the Blight. The Blight, you already know what I'm going to say. So most killers have at least a few good add-ons. But it's really crazy to me that the Blight's basically got 3 that are just absolutely nutty. And of those 3, that damned Alchemist ring, it needs to be gone yesterday. It is so unhealthy, it's so impossible to deal with if the Blight is any good at all. I am a garbage Blight player. I'm so bad with Blight, but if I run Alchemist ring, that's still just a free win. That is the most busted add-on in the game right now. And the fact that it has been here for years is shocking to me. I am aghast when I see the Alchemist ring because I just don't know who thought this was a good idea. And even then, okay, you release them with it, you're like, okay, well, we don't really quite know how strong this killer is going to be. Okay, that's fair. But then the Blight shoots up to the top of the tier list, just under Nerf probably, and they have all this time to look at this and say, okay, maybe he's overperforming. Maybe this is a little too strong. And really, all I think needs to be changed, all that I'm really seeing here, is the Alchemist ring. I think that the Blight is fine to be a strong killer, to be an S tier killer. Would it still be arguable that the Blight could use some kind of a nerf somewhere else? Yeah, I would think so, because I mean, again, ridiculously strong. But I don't know. I think it's fair to have strong killers, really strong killers. But the Alchemist ring goes beyond that. The Alchemist ring takes out so much of the skill from the survivor side and basically just gives the Blight the ability to just take free wins. And again, if you're talking about a not so good Blight, that's a problem. If you're talking about a great Blight, that's a huge game-breaking issue. So I think Blight is a pretty simple one. I just think take out the Alchemist ring and most people will be happy with where he is. Again, you could always make that case that he should be nerfed a little further, but I think most people, 80+%, would be generally happy with where Blight is if you just get rid of this one add-on. That's all I'm asking for. I don't think that's asking too much. And in fact, I think most Blight mains agree, because I think most of the people who spend the most time on Blight are like, yeah, we don't need this. We can win without this. And then finally, I do want to talk about one more. At number 3, I want to talk about one more killer who's at the top of the tier list. And I'm going to spend very little time on this one. It's the Nurse. Of course it's the Nurse. Ever since her release, Nurse has just been completely busted and everybody knows it. Nobody's in the dark about how strong Nurse is. Except for, you occasionally get that big brain take where somebody's like, actually, I don't think the Nurse is nearly as good as people make her out to be. And while usually I want to hear out the other side and I want to debate the opposition and I want to be fair and I want to be, I want to give my best foot to defeating perspectives I don't agree with, sometimes you just have to realize these opinions, to say that the Nurse is not just absolutely gross with her power level, it's like trying to debate a flat earther. Like at a certain point, you just got to realize, okay, well, this is only bringing me down because I'm not going to convince them, right? You can't. The Nurse is absolutely busted. And I'm not saying she's not tough to use to some extent. Now, I think even that, first off, that's a flawed argument, right? Because that's what you always hear. Oh, well, anybody who spends the time learning how to play the Nurse deserves that kind of power. Really? I can play Nurse generally well, and it didn't take me that long to learn how to do it. And make no mistake, that's not a flex, because the whole point of it is that I'm not that good at the game, but if I want a 4K, if I've been having a rough time because I'm a clown main, so yeah, those happen a lot, yeah, I can always swap over to Nurse and I can have a much easier time. The Nurse is just busted beyond belief. I mean, it's a killer that doesn't have to loop. That's crazy to me that even exists. Anyway, I said I'm not going to go off on the whole Nurse rant. I think everybody knows how I feel. Most people knows how most people feel about this. This is a killer that most people agree is just completely busted, needs to change. Is it going to happen? No, it's not. For whatever reason, the devs seem extremely fond of keeping the Nerfs powerful. I have heard the argument that it may be because Nerfs is a free killer, and therefore no matter what they add, as long as the most overpowered, absolutely busted killer is free to play, they can say, look, this isn't a pay-to-win game. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. I try to not, go straight to like the worst possible interpretation, but I don't know, that one might have a little bit of truth to it. But either way, Nerfs, too strong, needs a nerf. Go away, please. Now what I want to do is, for number 4, I want to actually link 2 in together. One of them being a very high up on the tier list killer, and one being very, very down low. And that is Huntress and Clown. And the issue there is obviously going to be their insta-down add-ons. Now, at the surface, I don't really mind the concept of insta-down. Obviously, Billy has insta-down, Bubba has insta-down. There are insta-down killers out there. And then you have perks like Hubris and Noed and Devour Hope, which are insta-down perks, a Dragon's Grip, right? You have insta-down in the game, and generally speaking, I don't have a problem with it. I don't have a problem with the concept of insta-down. But in the case of the Eerie Hatchet and the Pinky Finger, the issue for me is that they're not that hard to get maximum value out of. You don't have to be that good to get value out of them. And what's worse is that if you have a killer, again, who is dedicated to being as mean as possible, if they get you in the basement, it's over. It's absolutely over. Because all Huntress needs is to have a locker around. Well, the basement's got a lot of those. And all Clown needs is to do his reload, which of course is not a long process at all, especially not if he's running the Cork Stopper, even though he's a lot more likely to be running the cheap gen bottle. But either way, if all he needs is to reload, he's going to be able to do that very quickly. Huntress can do that very quickly. They're going to have their insta-down right back, and if they have somebody on the hook, it doesn't even have to be basement. I made the point that it was basement, but really, it doesn't even have to be. It's better for Huntress, but Clown, my goodness, he can get that value either way. And yeah, to me, that's a problem. I feel like the beauty of Devour Hope is that the killer has to both get lucky and play well to get Devour Hope value. Noed, it's a last-ditch effort to try to save a game that's getting away from you. Some people hate it, but I mean, that is the point of the perk, is to be this last-ditch effort, and you know what? I'm okay with that as a concept. Hubris and Dragon's Grip are both very specific in how you got to activate them and all that. Yada yada. Okay, we get it. There are a lot of ways where it feels very fair to go up against an insta-down. But in the case of the Huntress, there's really not just a whole lot you can do to dodge a hatchet. I mean, if it's a pretty decent Huntress, they're going to get you. Now, obviously, if you're just like a insanely cracked looper, maybe you can make it go a little longer than others, but I don't know. I find that it's not that hard to get value with the hatchets. And then as far as getting a bottle toss, which is how you get value out of the Pinky Finger, that's super easy. Bottle tosses are very easy. And I think the only reason people don't realize how easy they are is because almost nobody plays the Clown. So for me, obviously, I'm not really making much of a case for nerfing these killers in any serious way. I think that both Huntress and Clown generally are doing what they're designed to do, and they're doing it well, even if people kind of hate both killers for different reasons. I think most people like the Huntress. People seem to hate the Clown, though, which is very crazy to me because he's just not that good. So, like, leave my boy alone. But either way, if they would just go in, get rid of those 2 iridescent add-ons, I say get rid of them, just rework them. Just rework them to be, I don't really even know what you would do. You can make it to where hitting with the hatchet and getting the bottle toss do something more effective. So for example, if you get a bottle toss with Clown, it already slows the survivors down more. I believe they may have patched that out, but at least at one point in time, it already slowed the survivors down more than if you just do a regular gas cloud. So maybe just make that a harsher penalty, where if you get a bottle toss, you're almost guaranteed a hit because they're going to slow down tremendously. I think that's fair. Look, I'm not here for trying to give perfect recommendations. I'm sure there are going to be flaws with all of them, but you get my point. Anyway, I would say that's a pretty easy fix to make, and it's one I would like to see. And then finally, I want to do something that I don't feel very good about. And that thing that I want to do is I want to pick on somebody who by a lot of counts is at the very bottom of the tier list. Now, I want to go out and say, I think it's crazy that this killer is at the bottom of a lot of tier lists. That's crazy to me. I don't see it, but a lot of people do. For our 5th and final entry, what I want to do is see a nerf to Michael Myers. Now, again, like I said, I don't think Myers is in the F tier, I don't think Myers is D tier, and I don't think so because he's able to insta-kill people, and I have a problem with that. And I know some people are going to say that, oh, he's still F tier, he's still D tier, but I think if you have the ability to insta-kill somebody, and it's as easy as it is with Myers, you're not talking about a bad killer. You're talking about a pretty good killer, maybe with some limitations and maybe with some odd play styles, but I don't know. I'm always shocked when I hear people put them that low, and I think it's mostly just because, respectfully, I think a lot of people in Dead by Daylight tend to just parrot opinions. It's kind of like whatever the consensus is what people tend to go with. Maybe not. Maybe I'm just in the wrong and I'm a big dumb dummy and I'm just seeing things all wrong. But yeah, I don't know. I think Myers is pretty powerful. The ability to Mori without a Mori and with as minimal activation as it requires. Now, people are going to say minimal activation. I'm not talking necessarily about doing the tombstone with the, with perma tier 3 and the ability to just insta-kill everybody. That takes a while to charge up, certainly. But if you have the tombstone piece, that's pretty easy. And for me, the absolute worst part about this one is that generally speaking, the person that gets Mori'd is not the person that fed Myers, which is a problem from a game design perspective, because I really feel like, it, oh man, it just frustrates me when I'm playing the game and I get insta-killed because somebody else, Michaela was sitting on a generator and not looking around, so all of a sudden Myers got up to like tier 2.5, and then, suddenly Myers happens across me and is able to pretty quickly get the other one. I think that's a pretty rough feeling. I don't think it's particularly good game design. I don't like it very much. And for me, it's something that would benefit from changing. Now, I realize that that's kind of harsh and it makes it to where Myers suddenly goes to the D tier. I'm saying, oh, I don't think he's D tier, but he should be. I realize that's not nice, so I'd be okay with some corresponding buffs to other areas of Michael to make up for that, because obviously I love Michael and I don't want to see him stop being played. But I do get really tired of the fact that if you go up against a Myers and they're not doing Scratch Mirror, which is still pretty rare, but it happens, if they're not doing Scratch Mirror, they're almost definitely doing Tombstone Piece or worse. And, oh man, I don't know. I just find that to be, I think it's a bad mechanic. I don't like it just a whole lot. And I'm interested, I asked about Wesker because I want to know how y'all felt about that one. And we're going to kind of book into it with that. I want to know about how you feel about the Wesker thing, and I want to know how you feel about the Myers thing. So let me know what you think about any of it, but particularly those two, because I think those are the spiciest takes. But I hope you enjoyed. Let me know if you have any Nerf ideas for killers that I didn't mention. Obviously, if I didn't mention a killer, it doesn't necessarily mean they don't need to be nerfed. It just meant that in this particular exercise, I didn't really think they were worth bringing up. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed this one. Please do feel free to call me a boosted survivor main down in the comments. Either way, I hope you're having a lovely day wherever you are. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please do, again, like, subscribe, do all that. Look, it's YouTube. It's the game, right? It's the game within the game. Anyway, take care of yourself. Enjoy your day. And until next time, I've been DasFood. Bye, friends.
I've been dreaming on in my head like I've seen it. A life worth living is a life with meaning. I'll do what I love till my heart stops beating. I'm feeding this demon. Got a taste, can't erase bitterness in my